If AI performance is increasingly limited by how fast light gets on and off the chips, what must change in PIC packaging standards and manufacturing? We'll answer these questions today, and I have an amazing panel of guests today. So Kazu Takano, Richard Pitwon, Peter O'Brien, welcome to the podcast here in San Francisco. So if you could just let all of our viewers know who you are. Kazu, if you want to start.
Well, my name is Kazu Takano. I've been in Senko for almost 30 years. Right now, I'm the Chief Business Development Officer and the President of the Emerging Technologies Group in Senko. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm Richard Pitwon. I'm the CEO of Resolute Photonics, and we're a company that develop subsystems for photonic integrated circuits for different applications like AI switching, gas sensors, even space transceivers. And I'm also strongly involved in standardization. I've been in the IEC, the International Technical Commission, for 15 years, and strongly involved in the optical connector and quantum side of that.
Okay. Peter?
Yeah, Peter O'Brien from the Tyndall Institute in Ireland, as part of University College Cork. I have the advanced packaging and systems integration activities at Tyndall, and we have a large number of collaborations. So we work very effectively through collaborations, particularly across Europe, but also global collaborations, Asia and the US. This area is growing enormously for us at the moment. Very exciting times.
Okay, so the pressure's on me. I'm here with 3 PIC rock stars and me trying to keep up.
I think you're a rock star by yourself, you know?
No, not in the presence of you visionaries. But okay, so let's get into the first segment. Why PIC packaging matters? What's the one reason PIC packaging is harder than most people think?
Yeah, maybe I can start by saying, you ask, why is PIC packaging difficult? Or what's the big challenge, or why is it interesting? Why are you talking to us today? Actually, packaging is very interesting. Advanced packaging, and that really means something, because there's a lot of developments now in not just PICs, but electronics. So chips are getting more complex and more dense. So it's not possible to fabricate a monolithic single chip anymore. It's just not viable with yield and performance. So we have to make these chiplets at different foundries. And the only way then they can be operated is where they're packaged together on a common, for example, interposer. And PICs are part of that. And that presents great challenges. So it's really interesting because now the industry, just the semiconductor industry, not just the photonics industry, sees packaging as key. It's really, really essential. So right now we're starting to see this huge investment in advanced packaging. You're seeing a lot of companies, a lot of research institutes like ourselves, investing in this area, including the European Chips Act. And it's not just PIC packaging. So really the fantastic thing is that PIC packaging is becoming important, but also advanced packaging. So we're we're working together with the electronics world, and there's a huge move towards electronic style packaging for photonics. And that's the scaling. We can leverage the scaling that's being done in the electronics world for photonics as well. So I think the challenge has been that it's been very custom. It's been not standardized. It's difficult to scale as a result. And the investments maybe haven't helped that either. But because advanced packaging in general now is absolutely essential for things like AI in electronics, photonics is also part of that club, if you will. It's being included. So all the investments, all the equipment, all the workforce, etc., photonics is working within that kind of grouping. And that's really leveraging that capability. So if you look into advanced packaging, it's not just PIC packaging. This is where it's becoming really, really important and quite exciting.
Richard, how packaging constraints ripple into system-level specifications and standard choices?
One thing about PICs is they're essentially optical microchips where you have the ability to guide light and to change the phase of light. And if you can leverage silicon, for example, CMOS foundries, you have huge volumes there. But packaging it, the key thing, for example, connecting the optical arrays, optical fibers to it, requires huge alignment, it requires repeatability, it requires reliability, and that's an area where standardization is really important. And there have been attempts, certainly in the last 20 years, repeated attempts to see what can we standardize. And the problem is because it's such a new technology and people do it in different ways, standardization is seen as a constraint to innovation. So you don't want to, for example, standardize the size and shape of the PIC because that will vary depending on the function. So the important thing is where is standardization useful? There was a project a while back, Paradigm, maybe about 10 years ago, where this was attempted, but it was still too early to try and develop standards there because it was still too niche. There was too much variation. But now there's a new effort in the IEC to develop standards, for example, for interfaces to fiber PICs. So, for example, regardless of the variation in functionality, there are many common factors such as 1x12 arrays, 1x16 arrays to PICs. If that can be standardized and you can assign a benchmark, say minimum loss, maximum loss, that will be very useful because that gives you a benchmark and that gives you a way to repeatedly do it. So that's where standardization. That's an example where standardization is important.
Okay. Kazu, why designing for manufacturability and serviceability so it can be built and maintained repeatedly?
Well, listening to what Peter and Richard mentioned, as you know, the packaging technology is evolving. Right now, it's the first time in this 30 years in doing fiber optics that the application of the market is way advanced than the technology can catch up. And there's a limitation how much you can advance each chiplet, right? So that's why now packaging is important. And there's various ways to package the, including the chiplets and to the PIC. And now if there's various types and flavors out in the market, now at the very end, how do you connect the packaged products and the PIC to the fiber? So if there's 10 companies having 10 different ways and 10 different beam angles with different beam waist, beam sizes, you're going to have 10 different flavors and you have to develop 10 different methods to connect to the PIC. And that's not ideal. And that's why Richard and Peter, and we've been talking how we can standardize some of the things to enable the advancement of the packaged PICs or the chips.
Okay, so right now the industry, it's moving faster. There was a phrase that you said that
it's racing ahead.
Yeah, so in many cases, when you look like at fiber to the home or fiber to the antenna or throughout the years, there has been a technology development. But in many cases, the application is not there. Even for cellular phones, right? There is technologies, but many cases, the application is not as hungry as the technology can drive. But right now, the application developed by AI and AI itself is moving so fast and the need to deploy that is so strong. And the technology to support that, which in many cases goes to the chips and how much you can process the data, without consuming electricity is something that power consumption is a big problem.
Okay.
So in order to enable the AI, the technology in the chiplets or the packaging are still behind. And that's why there's a lot of investment going there. That's why a lot of companies are racing to bring up the technology. And that's how I feel right now. But saying that, if you have 10 different flavors of, packaged products, and if people don't know how to connect it to the fiber, it's not going to have the scale of economies. So that's why standardization is important. And that's what we have been kind of talking, how we can generate more standards. And from our interest, as you may know, Sanko has been connecting fiber to fiber, and that's been our technology over the years. And now we need to connect the fiber to the PIC.
Another issue with the choices, another issue with having, you say 10, there could even be more options for connections, is you might make a bad choice. If it's, that's a problem. And we often say that it may not be efficient or reliable and so forth. So for example, bonding fibers to the chip, that can be, if you look at the electrical equivalent, and I think we need to do more of this. In the electronics world, how is it done? Electrical connections are pluggable. You don't solder wires onto the semiconductor chip itself.
Yeah.
So what Sanko have developed is this pluggable connector. It's a beautiful connector. It's small, it's compact, and it's pluggable. That's really mirroring what's done in the electrical world, a pluggable electrical connector. And if you ask any mechanical design engineer who's designing these systems, they want pluggability. And you want to be able to take a part out. You might have to rework it for whatever reason. You might need to disconnect it for reflow, and it has to withstand certain temperatures. You can disconnect the connector. So pluggability, and I think this theme of matching with and following what's being done in the electronics world, in certain kind of setups, optical fibers, as I mentioned, pluggability is really, really important. And Senko are setting the pace on that and developing these very exciting connectors. And I think that's a very nice example, mirroring what's done in the electrical side of connectivity.
I agree.
Okay.
One of the attractive features of the Senko connector is it's agnostic to the type of optical connection you place. So you have the receptacle, you have the plug, but you can place whatever type of optical connector you like there. So you're not tied to one specific solution, one person, and that's very, very attractive.
And a final point I'd say is, from our perspective as a research and development organization, Senko have been very open to kind of working with us, discussing things with us. So that accelerates our research, because we can't anticipate. So they're in some sense bringing us kind of challenges, and I visit them in their Japan and work with Richard and some other people as well. So it's not just the standardization; it's the collaboration is really important between the industry and the research.
Okay, so talking about investment, I wanted to ask you, because I read that you secured a decent amount of funding.
Yeah.
I don't know if am I
very
able to say it?
significant. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you make the case for that, and why is this timing critical for that funding?
I think we made the case over many years. I think you can't go into pitch for something and people can't see something you've delivered. You've got a demand that takes time. So we've been working on this for many, many years, and you can see the rise of this. It's not just a one-hit wonder. It's going to come and go quickly. And again, working with industry, you can see the business case, if you want to call it. Even researchers have to have a business case, to show that this is actually ultimately, because you're pitching in your proposal that this is needed, it's going to have impact, economic and societal impacts and all these kind of things. So that's relatively straightforward. You can see the demand, but also you can see we're working with industry. And as I said, we've done that over years. So it's kind of like being kind of bubbling away, and the credibility is there and the market is there. So you really start to get, believe that this is a good thing to invest in. So all the stakeholders, like the Irish government, for example, the European Commission, here in the US and in Japan, they see that. They can see the real need. It's amazing. Even the man or woman on the street knows about chips now. They know about, for example, in Europe, they know about the CHIPS Act. They understand. They've heard of TSMC. They know about ASML. It's amazing. They understand this. Sometimes we think it's just a group of academics or industry people. So when you speak to politicians, they get it. In Ireland, they know what advanced packaging is now. So, that's taken a number of years to get people behind this. So it doesn't just happen, you go in and pitch something and you leave and hopefully you get your funding. It takes a while, but people get it. People see the need.
So I want to ask you a very quick question regarding that funding. The funding that you secured was government funding. Why not private? Or why would
we also
the government?
For example, in the CHIPS Act, it's European and national funding. So the countries also have to match it. But the follow-on is then industry needs to get involved. So when we go back the next time, and we've done this a number of times, they want to see how many companies have you worked with, how many jobs have you helped create, and this point about energy. I do a bit of outreach and speak to people, the public. They're very concerned about energy. Energy is a big concern. Data centers, and people are very aware of that. And sometimes we don't make the case we talk about how fast it is, and actually we're saving energy here, and people really get behind that. They understand this is a big issue. Yeah. So I think that's a very important thing. So the messaging is very important. But so the investment, to go back to your question, the investment is coming from the public, but industry. The other thing is the public bodies go to industry and they ask, is this a good thing? We had to lobby for this with industry, and industry says this is a good thing to invest in.
Okay. So, Richard, how large public investments influence standards development and industrial alignment?
In Europe, like everywhere, in Europe it's particularly strong. You have this Horizon Europe program, for example, and it's aimed at encouraging deep collaboration between industry and academia and finding the right balance so that industry can so you don't get too much focus on academia. The balance is on exploitation. They have this problem they call they refer to as the valley of death, where they fund a lot of projects and the work's carried out and then nothing happens. So they're really, and that's still a big massive problem. So the focus is really on how do you make industry exploit this. Standardization is an increasingly important part of that. In the past, it's been seen as frivolous, not an advantage at all. It's just make the prototypes, but the value of standardization in accelerating commercial adoption is starting to be recognized.
Oh, okay. So, Kazu,
Yes.
the downstream effects on manufacturing, OSAT's engagement and detachable interface maturation. How does that like funding play into that part?
Well, for our product, the seat product, the receptacle and the cover plate, which allows the detachability of the fiber to the PIC, there is no standard right now. It is Senko's goal to make a standard so that on every PIC that you make a connection, you can mix and match. So if you can think, like let's say when you travel to Europe, you have a problem with a power cable, right?
Yeah.
You cannot connect the US one to Europe, and you cannot charge your computer. Or if you look in the computer, thanks right now that many things are standard around the USB 3.0. But if every computer had different outlets, and it'll be a big problem, right? You'll have to carry multiple cables, or you're going to have problems that you cannot make connections. That's the same thing that could happen in the PIC industry as well, too. So for us, I think to support the ecosystem and support the deployment of the CPO and the PICs in the world, we do need to have some standards so that company A and B and C, regardless if it's the CPO packaging company or the system company, cable assembly companies, of course, in packaging companies, that you can buy the same product and do mix and matches and have a good low insertion loss connection to fiber to the PIC. And that's what we're doing.
Okay.
I think that's needed.
Yes.
Do you agree?
I totally agree, and especially because you made the analogy of plugging into the computer, traveling to Europe. I've always wondered why in the world, like, you have different outlets. Like, it's electricity, it's a 110, 220, but you go
it
to
is a problem.
Yes, it is,
right?
and it's an inconvenience. It's a huge inconvenience. If you travel abroad, you have to get an adapter, which is the same electricity that you're using. But I've always found that like very like an inconvenient thing. And I was like, why doesn't the whole world just get together and use the same outlets? To me,
At one time we had to carry so many cables when you travel, right?
Engineers are very creative.
That's right.
That can be a problem sometimes.
Yeah.
Standards helps keep you on the straight and narrow, and especially if you're scaling. And I think part of the problem here is sometimes there's so much technology, there's so many options. You mentioned about research, the valley of debt and moving it into commercialization. You have to make choices, down selection of key things, and sometimes that's difficult to do. And you've got proprietary designs. One of the challenges with photonics, especially because of the startups, and there's a lot of startups in photonics, that proprietary technology, and they try and push that. So you've got all these different options, choices again, where everyone is kind of doing different things. And it's difficult for them to kind of maybe unify, everyone come to a common agreement. And I think in one way, the Achilles heel of photonics is it's so many technologies. Its strength in some ways can be its weakness. You have to start to standardize and down select. And once you go through that, then you come into a new realm. And that's where scaling happens, I think. So it's difficult choices, but then it opens up other options. You kind of standardize those technologies. So, and it's gone through that kind of rebirth, if you want to call it that.
Okay.
I think that's important, and we've got to recognize that.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the power cables are a good example. So the reason that you have different outlets in the US and the UK and Europe is historic. But one good argument for looking at standardizing early is harmonization. So look at quantum, for example, where's the actor. If you get if the standards bodies, the different standards bodies get involved early on, you can harmonize, and the more you harmonize, the less you get this very unpractical division later.
Okay.
So that's why the seat is a good example, like I mentioned before, because it's agnostic. Because another thing that vendors want is multi-vendor. They don't want to be tied to one vendor. But if it's a standard, different vendors can adopt it, and you can adopt different connectors, and that's very powerful, actually.
So you guys went ahead a little bit on the question that I wanted to ask, and it's about standards. So this more for you, Richard. What are the standards that actually influence packaging choices in Europe? And then what are the biggest gaps, like terminology, measurements, and interfaces?
There's a whole family of standards categories. In my case, it's from my perspective, one of the greatest challenges with packaging is the alignment of the fiber to the PIC. So you need curing it, applying glue, applying it, and curing it in such a uniform way that over time you don't get differences in it, which will lead to fracturing and so on. So you have all these little that seem pedantic details, but critically important. So there's standards for curing, adhesive. Standards for the type of interface you use, benchmarks for how much loss you need to have in order to meet that standard. That's also very critical. So, for example, you can define 0.5 dB max loss per port. That'll be hard to achieve, but 0.5 dB max per port. If there are applications such as quantum where you need really, really low loss, and they're willing to spend much more money to achieve that, you can create grades of this loss. So, for example, in a new IC group that I started, Quantum Group, Quantum Optical Interconnect, we are now defining a grade Q, which is a grade for optical connection to quantum grade optical connectors, where you have very, very low loss, because if in the case of quantum we're using entangled photons or single photons across different interfaces, they can't be disrupted at all. They need to have a seamless connection. So that's an example where this kind of this heightened grade is very useful.
Okay, Kazu. So from the connector perspective,
Okay.
Which aspects of detachable hybrid interfaces are toughest to standardize, and why?
Well, I think there's two things. First of all, I really wish that the PIC industry can standardize the beam characteristic. That means that the beam shape that it comes out, at what angle, and if you have variance in theirs, you're going to have a lot of cable needed. So hopefully the industry, you have the edge coupling and also the grading coupling. There's two types, but even with the edge coupling, Senko was able to demonstrate how to bend the light upward and create a expanded beam, beam output in a certain angle. So hopefully the industry can standardize in the output beam shape. And now, how do you connect that to the fiber? So what do you think we need in order to standardize? What are the important aspects? What do you think, Arturo? What do you want? If you want to have multiple suppliers, what are the important things? I'm going to ask you a question.
No, yeah, and thank you. It's the first time I've ever been asked a question in a podcast. But to me, it's like the unification of things.
Unification, yes.
Standardizing, right?
Yeah.
But I was not aware that when you said like at what angle, like standardizing that, my mind didn't go that way. I was thinking more of like, for example, the connector, light goes in, certain type of fiber, single mode, multi-mode, whatever. But I never thought about the actual angle the light goes in.
Yes.
Because that's, what's it called? The MPA? Is that the reflective?
The metal PIC connector,
Yes.
Or it can be our competitor's fiber array unit. So unless the PIC and the photonics, how the light comes out is not standardized, you'll have to have a lot of fiber arrays, right? So we want to standardize that, the beam, angle and the size of it. But beyond that, if you have multiple suppliers of the cable, how you can mix and match So you have supplier A, B, and C. And if you have a CPO module that has a lot of tiles on the receptacles, you want to make sure that you get a good insertion loss, regardless who you use and where you connect it to. And that's very difficult. So the connection portion part and the optical light, standardization are both important.
People think the connectors are just mechanical, how it fits. And there's a lot of optics in there. It's very sensitive. There's a lot of optical design. And there's surface roughness and all these parameters from a manufacturing perspective. And how you control that is really important. Really important. So what's amazing is a company like Senko can manufacture those because the precision in the manufacturing. We do things like 3D printing of micro-optics. That takes a long time. This company can manufacture it in very large volume. So the control to manage that optical interconnect, remember it's an optical interconnect, so it's not a mechanical connection. So beam profiles, beam angles, they're all really important. And it was just said, foundries design chips, I don't say they neglect the performance of the beam, but it's not as critical what goes in the center of the chip as much as, the edge is, we just singulate the chip. So the light comes out, deal with it, guys. Packaging guys, deal with it. And that's the problem.
That is the problem, basically.
Lots of flavors.
Yes.
There's lots of flavors.
After the light comes out of the PIC and the beam, profile or the
we work on many
different
projects, and every day we get different chips. And we're wondering, as you say, what's the beam profile today? What are we dealing with today? And so there's lots of challenges there in the optics in that connector. And then you think about it, the number of channels going up is significant. It's like 4 and 8 and 12 before. Now it's like we're seeing maybe 100 or even more.
Yeah, it is getting much higher and higher and
That's
higher.
another thing. So the demands in many kind of dimensions, numbers of channels, connection, the volume, how many we need to do, the throughput, all these things, they're all moving in very fast pace. So you have to address all of these.
Yeah, the metal PIC coupler, the first one we made was 8. And when we finished the 8, the market needed a 16. So we developed the 16. And when we launched it, the market said we needed 20. Okay. So we finished the 20 and now they need 36. Now they need 42. And now we're developing a 2-row of 40, which is 80. Wow. So the quantity is increasing and increasing. Yeah. And how you keep all the 80 fibers or 42 fibers, whatever it is, to be able to repeatedly, put the connector on and off and, have a stable insertion loss is a challenge. And now we're talking of connecting to multiple receptacles and adding a varieties of different suppliers, and to be able to maintain the insertion loss or the repeatability is a big challenge for Senko. And I think our seat solution on the receptacle and cover plate is one of a good solution that can solve the issues of mix and matches.
I think a great thing about what Senko has, it's there. They can make it. You can use it. There's other options that people look and say, oh, this is really interesting, but it hasn't been made, and especially it hasn't been manufactured.
So it's like concept.
It's like a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. We have this one. It works. And I think in standardization, in some ways, you have to go with what you have and implement it, and then you scale. But as it was just said, the number of channels going up is enormous. It really is increasing. We're going to 2D arrays now.
Yeah. Now it's going to be
so
2Ds.
Scaling is enormous.
Another challenge that's going to come up is shoreline density. A PIC can have waveguides very, very close together, but fiber is limited. There are fundamental limits in how close fibers can be together. Before you move to things like multi-core fibers. So there's work going on in, for example, looking at fan-out wafer level packaging, where they can even use polymer waveguides, which can be much more densely packaged to couple and then fan out and then allow a coupling to fibers. So that's if you want to exploit the full potential of PICs, very, very dense interfaces for some applications where you have huge numbers of I/O. That's going to come up.
And this interconnect problem on chips, I mentioned about electronics at the start. Same issue in electronics. The edge, there's a saying, the edge is not fast enough for the middle, where all the processing is done. The edge is the connect where the connectivity happens. It's the same issue in electronics. Okay. So there's a number of interfaces on the electronic chip is increasing, and that shoreline density for optics and for electronics is rapidly increasing. So it's a problem that just keeps growing and growing and growing, which is very exciting.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I think everyone thinks that electronics is stagnating in optics, but actually in electronics, copper hybrid bonding is an incredible innovation.
Because that's where packaging is coming in this chiplets. We can't make super big chips anymore. You have to break them up. You can't make all one chip in TSMC where you've got, maybe large node size. You break it up and get that done somewhere else. All the high end stuff could be done at a small node size, but you got to bring it together.
Okay.
And then those chips have to interface. I'm talking about electronics now. So you have all these edges all connected and that very high density. So like these interposers are used to connect those. So the engineer in electronics and the engineer in photonics have similar challenges. And that's a good thing.
At the moment, what are the capabilities that, for example, the US has when it comes to the PIC? And then again, same type of capabilities that Europe has.
Well, maybe I can start by saying, just speaking about Europe in particular, I think Europe has been very strong in training and education in this area. We've got a lot of very good universities and institutes. Likewise here in the US and also in Japan and China and that as well. But just Europe in particular. From an education and training, we do a lot of training. We bring people in and give them practical training in our labs. But also Europe is very good at equipment, especially in optical packaging. We've got some very good companies like Photonic Tech and Axiom Tech, and there's quite a few in Germany in particular. But we have a lot of electronic companies as well, manufacturing, packaging. So for those things, Europe is very strong. I think recently in the last decade, there's been big investments in pilot lines. So that would be a higher TRL, technology readiness level. But we also have a lot of these programs around Horizon Europe, which are basic research or fundamental research, applied research. So you got that kind of value chain of research from basic research to more pilot line scaling. And the other thing is Europe's strength is all the linkage between the different countries. When we were educated in universities, we did Erasmus programs and we moved around. So we got very comfortable working with different countries who bring different strengths. Like, for example, the Netherlands is very strong in indium phosphide. Ireland is strong in a lot of packaging. There's other countries as well. IMEC in Belgium is strong in silicon, for example. So you have all these different partnerships that build, and Europe encourages those. So social parts of projects are very important. When we do projects, we spend time people travel, and we have meetings at different sites. So I think that kind of mix is very, very important. All those different things.
Yeah.
Just from my perspective in the US, I think the US in particular has very strong applications. It's got those big companies like the big data center companies and so forth. So there's a real drive from the application pool. Okay. I think that's very strong. But of course, then you have the great universities and institutes, and you've got organizations like AIM Photonics, very strong in silicon photonics, packaging and that. So there's a lot there, but I think all the different countries have somewhat different strengths, but then we're all learning from each other as well.
Okay. So, let's do a really quick lightning round. Peter, myth or fact, wafer level integration will make fiber attach a solved problem?
I think it's a fact.
Fact?
I think solved problem, does that mean it'll solve the problem or address it?
Yeah, it'll resolve the problem.
So I think generally packaging is moving back into the fab.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's going to be a wafer level process, like putting optics on the chip.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Singulating the chip and package level processing is not sustainable because it's package by package. So you can only package one package at a time. That's not scalable. It has to be wafer level.
Okay.
It goes back to my point. Following assembly in electronics, microelectronics, a lot of the assembly is done at wafer level. Has to be done in photonics as well.
Okay. Richard, finish this sentence. The hidden killer in PIC packaging is?
Variability in result. There's a lot of unpredictability in assembly results.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That's perfect. Kazu.
Okay.
One thing the ecosystem underestimates about detachable design is?
That you have a lot of companies that will try to make the same products, but manufacturing capability is different from company to company.
Yeah.
So you do need to have a solution that can accept the manufacturing difference, which is our seat solution. And we can talk in hours about that maybe in your next session.
Yeah.
Why the seat can enable manufacturing errors and still sustain great accuracy and repeatability. I believe that is the only solution that can allow mix and matches.
Okay.
So we have that solution.
Yes. Okay. Well, guys, thank you very much for that lightning round. And we're at the end of the podcast. So I want to thank you for your time, and all of your insights were very insightful. I every single time I talk to people, I do learn a lot. And right now it's like my mind is exploding with all the information that I got from you. So thank you very much for doing this and agreeing to this. And hopefully this is not the last one that we do, because I do want to keep on talking to you and learn more about this, because this is something that it's one of those things that you have to learn. And everything that's happening with AI is like, if you want to know how AI is getting to you, it's like, you need to learn this. And I always like to learn about those things. So I do appreciate the time, and thank you guys.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
To all of our viewers,
Thank you.
Here from San Francisco, thank you for watching.